Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm here today to talk about Sceptile, which I know has been a very highly requested Pokemon on my channel. Um, if you have been following me on Smogon, which I don't expect most of you do, because the Smogon forums are low-key kind of inaccessible, but I have made a post about using a team with 3 UUBLs or more. In my case, it was 3, and reaching 1650 ELO with that team. This is part of one of the ladder achievements, and if hopefully that gets verified and I can get the platinum for that. But if you have seen any of the replays, you'll know that Sceptile was one of the Pokemon on that team. You probably have seen Zetz's replay of the week, and if you haven't, then you should be watching those. But I did submit the replay that got to 1650 with this particular team, and if you want to see that, I'm sure you will find it on Zetz's channel, because we're actually not going to watch it today. It's not a fantastic showcase for Sceptile. I picked some replays that were a little bit more representative of what Sceptile is going to do in a game. So keep that in mind. But we're just going to keep it low-key. We're listening to Littleroot Town, which might be my favorite starter town theme across all of Pokemon. I mean, Pallet Town is classic. That's fine. New Bark Town is... I like the Gold and Silver version, actually, more than the Heart Gold and Soul Silver version. And I kind of feel the same about Littleroot as compared to the Oras version. I kind of like the lighter orchestration on this. It makes it feel a little bit more, how should I say, like nubile in a sense. Like I'm starting a new adventure. It's like light on the colors and stuff. But you know what? let's stop talking about the music. Start talking about the Pokemon before I lose everybody. The rankings here. We do not see Sceptile here. We see Venusaur, and we see Blaziken, and we don't see our boy Sceptile. Like, what's going on with that? The starter Pokemon, they're not favoring our guy here. Well, I mean, don't look for the Gen 2 starters. They don't exist, but we'll go on to the viability rankings from that Google Sheet that has the sort of aggregate rankings from all of the top players who responded to it. And we do see Sceptile is here, right below Jump Bluff and above Dragonite. It sits at 68th on this list. Keep in mind there are only 75 Pokemon who received a ranking at all. And only 5 of the respondents bothered to rank Sceptile. Fear, who is a gamer who has a fantastic custom avatar with Machamp and Iron Man, has it at 40th. Mielke has it at 49th. Crystal and Bedummy both have it at 54th, which is kind of an interesting coincidence that you agree on the 54th best Pokemon in the tier. And Pixie909 put it at 61st. This means that Pokemon such as Roselia and Jump Bluff outrank Sceptile. In fact, Jump Bluff is the 67th Pokemon on this list. It's kind of funny, but that doesn't really bode so well for Sceptile now, does it? That's okay, though. We're going to take a look at it and see what it can do, and maybe you guys will come to the conclusion, in fact, that Sceptile's underrated. It's underloved, I think, as a starter Pokemon, and that's kind of what I want to talk about here with this comment question is, what's your favorite starter Pokemon? For me, it's Cinderace. I think it's got a great mix of a simple yet elegant design, and I like its applications in competitive, particularly in Gen 8 and 9. Well, there's not really any other generations you can use it now, is there? But I guess maybe I'll challenge myself and think about who my favorite starter Pokemon is in a generation that Zetz is familiar with, which would have to be the first 3. I guess it's probably between Blaziken and Swampert, which is not really boding well for this being a Sceptile video, but I still think that Sceptile's got some interesting stuff to it. Gen 3's got a pretty solid roster of starters. A lot of people say that Gen 4 has the best. I would contend that I actually don't really like any of the Gen 4 starters, which is a hot take. But, yeah, before I dig myself any further into the hole, let's pivot to the speed tiers in ADV. So this is going to be examining, for the most part, Pokemon who are in the higher speed bracket. This has every Pokemon from 130 down to 115, and then I have Gengar at the bottom at 110, sort of just to orient us. I don't want to spend too much time talking about all the 110s. We're going to focus more so on this higher speed. So, on the left side, you will see what that Pokemon's speed stat is. If you invest 252 EVs, 31 IVs, and no plus speed nature. And to the right is if we add the plus speed nature. And I think it's kind of interesting when you look at things this granularly. All these base stats are multiples of 5. And then you look at the raw stat, if you invest all of the EVs in them, they all end in a 9, or they have a 9 in the ones place. It's kind of interesting when you look at it like that. And then, like, going down from Aerodactyl, Jolteon, Crobat sitting at 359 to Swellow, who's 5 base stats less, goes down to, or 10 points from that. It's kind of interesting how that works. I'm sure that the math is mathing there, and I would not be shocked to find out that if the Pokemon were level 50, that it is literally like 5 points difference. But in any case, we play with level 100 Pokemon, unless you're Jonald trying to use a level 97 Starmie for what God knows what. Shoutouts to Jonald, by the way. But probably we're going to be more interested in these max speed tiers, because most of these Pokemon, not all of them, but most of them, will want to invest in that plus speed nature to get the most out of their stats. But these are not the only Pokemon this fast. There are 2 Pokemon who are even faster, Ninjask and Electrode, who sit at like basically 400 speed. That's kind of incredible. You're outspeeding a lot of things at +2. So that's absurd. But they're a little bit more niche. Particularly Electrode is really niche in this tier. Ninjask definitely sees some use, especially lower ladder. They love that Ninjask speed pass. But even higher up on the ladder, there are some people who are still swearing by that Ninjask speed pass. And, you know, never gets any more fun playing against it. You know, I put out a bunch of polls about Baton Pass previously, and I'm working on a video that has to do more particularly with Baton Pass. You can speculate on it in the comments if you would like. But it seems like a lot of you guys have a bone to pick with Ninjask, and you know, I kind of feed into that, but in my opinion, Ninjask isn't even like the worst speed passer in the tier. I think there are some more problematic ones, and we'll talk about that more in a future video, but stay tuned for that. But these are not the only like speed tiers that are worth recognizing. Sometimes we want to take a look at Pokemon who get the +1 or +2 speed. I'm going to limit it just to Tyranitar here, because Tyranitar is obviously the most common Pokemon in the format. It is one of the best Pokemon in the format, and being able to outspeed a +1 Tyranitar is a big deal. And Jolly +1 Tyranitar hits 364 speed, which means that it is faster than a max speed Starmie, Raikou, Persian, or Sneasel. Darn, if Sneasel was only a little bit faster, maybe it could have been usable in OU. But this is good to know, though, because Pokemon like your Sceptile, Alakazam, and Dugtrio can outspeed that with maximum investment. In fact, they don't need quite maximum investment. They will need that plus speed nature, though. And then just for the sake of it, Adamant Tyranitar is going to hit 331, which is faster than all the base 100s, but not quite fast enough to catch Gengar. at 110. In fact, I think 105 base speed Pokemon can outspeed an Adamant Tyranitar at +1, so further reason to use Electabuzz. Not really, but this is, I think, good to know. You can get a lot more granular with your speed tiers, and there's a great resource on Smogon that will tell you about the speed tiers in ADV. I'm sure if you look up this title here, speed tiers in ADV, into your search engine of choice, you'll find it. And yeah, it gives you a lot of information. Some of the information is a little bit unnecessary, or outdated, or in fact, sometimes they don't have enough information. Maybe if I'm inspired to do so one day, I might make a video that is a little bit more representative of what you would actually see in the tier. Although I think Jim already made a video like that, so I don't know, maybe that's just copying his flow, which, you know, I don't want to be Jimothy Cool 2, I want to be Tetrafolium 1. Or actually, I want to be Tetrafolium 2. That's my ladder account, by the way. The base 120 speed tier in particular, though, that's the Pokemon of note here, is Sceptile. But it has some pretty good company with Dugtrio and Alakazam. It's kind of cool that at this particular speed tier, everything is ranked UUBL or OU. So, I mean, maybe there's something to this. But with 224 with a plus speed and nature investment, and of course we're going to assume 31 IVs, these Pokemon will always be faster than Tyranitar after a Dragon Dance. So that's good to know. You don't have to be quite all the way there, but I mean, granted, if you're that much, you might as well go all the way, or it kind of depends. You might be able to save some points to invest in your bulk a little bit so you can live a certain hit, because these Pokemon are all pretty frail. 85 Spadef from both Alakazam and Sceptile is not completely bad, but when you look at their HP stats, it's not looking great. Yeah, and their defense stats, let's not even talk about that. In any case, oh my god, Zets, it's on site. I said that in one of my recent videos, it's on site. With 216 investment, Pokemon are always faster, or these Pokemon I should say, are always faster than a plus speed base 100 or a modest 115. The modest 115s are 1 point faster than the base 100s, but we're going to go to 216, outspeed those base 100s by 2 so that we can outspeed modest Starmie and Raikou as well. That would be my recommendation anyway. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of room to do that. Now, you could also go a little bit faster than that as well to outspeed an Adamant +1 Tyranitar, but that's sort of up to you, your prerogative. I would definitely recommend that with Dugtrio, and I think I would also recommend that with Sceptile. Alakazam, it kind of depends on what moves you're running, although Alakazam tends to want to be really fast, so that might even be a moot point. Any Pokemon with less than a 65 base speed will need at least +2 to outspeed the base 120s when they're at max investment. So that's really good to know that something like a Swampert with a Salac boost is not going to outspeed you if you're going to max speed. Or same with Tyranitar. Same with like your fighting types who are pretty common recipients of Speed Pass boosts. So, or some of the fighting types, I should say, like your Machamp and Hariyama. Some of the, like Breloom and Heracross are too fast for that. So, Alakazam and Sceptile are a little bit more incentivized to run max speed so that they can avoid being trapped and KO'd by the Dugtrio. Now, Dugtrio itself likes to run max speed as well so that it can trap and remove other Dugtrio if you get into a dire situation. But Dugtrio sometimes wants to run a little slower so that it has enough to invest in its bulk so that it can effectively live an Ice Beam from Blissey and eliminate it with a 2-hit KO. Though because Dugtrio tends to want to do that, Alakazam and Sceptile can kind of get away with anticipating that they're going to outspeed Dugtrio if they're running a max speed nature, and if not, well, it's still a 50-50, so not the worst thing in the world. Now let's talk more specifically about the grass type in ADV. So grass is considered a pretty poor defensive type, and honestly a subpar offensive type. So here's what the sort of defensive profile of grass looks like. You're weak to flying, poison, bug, fire, and ice. That's a lot of types to be weak to, and some of those types are really, really bad to be weak to. Fire and ice in particular are very common coverage moves. So a lot of Pokemon will just naturally, trying to hit other types, have coverage to hit a grass type. Bug and flying are somewhat common as hidden power types. Flying is more common on Pokemon that have it as a stab, like, for example, Salamence or Gyarados. But Bug is just pretty common on physical attackers in general, particularly to hit Celebi, which is going to be a Pokemon that we'll talk about a little bit as a part of these grass types in ADV. But it also will help you hit things like Claydol, who otherwise resist the common coverage moves that physical attackers tend to have, like Ground and Rock. Poison is a pretty uncommon attacking type, so it's not super duper relevant, but things like Weezing still exist in the tier, Venusaur as well, using Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Bomb is a pretty strong move, and being weak to it is not great. You'd prefer to not be weak to it, but I guess if you were gonna pick a fifth type to be weak to, then Poison's not the worst. So, or Poison's in fact probably the best type to be weak to. It's just a shame that you're weak to 4 other types as well. But you do have resistances to ground, water, grass, and electric, all of which are pretty common attacking types. In fact, Earthquake is probably the most common attacking type, or attacking move in the game, or at least the one that's the most widely spread. Surf has got to be up there as well, HP Grass has got to be up there, and Thunderbolt is also really common as well. So, yeah, I mean, those resists are pretty good. It's just too bad that you have all of those weaknesses to go with it. Makes it kind of difficult to say that Grass is all that good as a defensive type, but I guess Pokemon like Celebi, who have phenomenal stats, can make it work. So it's not the worst thing, I guess. But as an offensive type, well, you are strong against ground, rock, and water, which are some pretty good types to be good into. The combination of ground and water means that you're actually ×4 super effective to Swampert, which is great for Pokemon that want to run grass coverage to hit such a Pokemon. It means, in fact, that offensive Pokemon like Tyranitar can sometimes run Hidden Power Grass with very little special attack investment and still be really threatening to Swampert. But look at all of these types that resist grass. Flying, Poison, Bug, Fire, Grass, Dragon, and Steel. Is there any other type in the game that is resisted by this many types? I don't think so. That's really, really, really bad. Pretty much all of these types exist in ADV, or at least in OU. Flying and Steel are really common. Skarmory, of course, is the combination of those two, but think about things like Zapdos, and Moltres, and Charizard, and Metagross, Jirachi, what's his name? Not Ferrothorn. Fortress, there you go. Yeah, I forgot about Fortress there for a moment. But these Pokemon are just all over the place. Those Pokemon that I just mentioned, you can almost guarantee that at least one of those is going to be on a team. So every team's going to have a grass resist, pretty much. And even if it wasn't those Pokemon, things like Flygon managed to avoid being weak to grass thanks to that dragon type. Or say like Heracross, who is not a particularly great defensive Pokemon, but also not bad. It's I think a lot better on the special defense side, which is, well, Grass is a special attacking move, and that makes it so that Pokemon like Celebi are really, really struggling to run just mono Grass coverage. Now, it can be done, but, like, yeah, Grass, not fantastic. In fact, I'm going to make the claim here that if you divorce the concept of what Pokemon the type is ascribed to, Grass is probably the worst type. Bug, yeah, a lot of people make the argument that Bug is bad, and I would agree that Bug is bad, in particular because you have to look at which Pokemon have the Bug type, and most of them are terrible. Basically the exceptions are Fortress and Heracross, who are pretty good, but, like, if you didn't have literally a mythical Pokemon like Celebi carrying Grass, like, who would we have? Breloom? Well, Breloom's, like, not really a Grass type. It's a fighting type that has Spore, pretty much. If it could shed its Grass type, in fact, I think it would. If it could keep Leech Seed and Spore to do so. That's maybe not so true in future generations, but at least in Gen 3. And, who's the next best after that? Venusaur? Venusaur's not bad, and being a Grass type is a big part of Venusaur's identity, and it's got some unique qualities because of that, but it's just not great. I think Grass, just in a vacuum, is the worst type, at least in Generation 3. Gets a little bit better in future generations when things like Grassy Terrain and Grassy Glide and Ogerpon with its Ivy Cudgel exist, but we're not here to talk about all that. So, and it doesn't get any better when we look at the moves. Well, at least the attacking moves. Grass's strongest attacking moves are Giga Drain, which is 60 base power and 8 PP in this generation, which is not great. And HP Grass, which is 70 base power and 24 PP. Now, a lot of types in this generation do not have a great stab, like, for example, Flying. Drill Peck is decent, but not very many Pokemon get Drill Peck, so a lot of Flying types who would want to use a Flying type move have to rely on Hidden Power to have that. So that's kind of the rub there. What would be another type? Bug? Yeah, Bug, for example. Where your best move otherwise is like Silverwind, unless you have Megahorn, but not very many Pokemon get Megahorn either. So, yeah. Leech Seed is pretty good though, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail here because, this is the thing that makes Grass types, in my opinion, not completely terrible. I guess, water resistance and ground resistance are fine as well. Those are good to have. But Leech Seed, how this works is it steals 12.5% rounded down of your opponent's HP per turn. And all of the damage dealt due to Leech Seed is going to be healed by the side that used Leech Seed. And now I mention the side because it's not necessarily the Pokemon that used Leech Seed. Leech Seed will go away when the effective Pokemon switches, but it won't go away when the inflictor of the move switches. So, let's just say, for example, you have a Celebi that Leech Seeds a Blissey. If the Blissey switches, then there's no more Leech Seed. But if the Celebi switches and the Blissey stays in, say you switch to Metagross, right? That Leech Seed is still on Blissey, so Metagross will be getting the Leech Seed healing off the Blissey. And then I want to explain this next part with a little bit more emphasis because I think this is something that people get really confused by. And I hope that I can sort of assuage that confusion here. So let's use this example. We have a 404 HP Celebi fighting a 404 HP Jirachi. That means they're both 252 EVs in speed. In HP. Jeez. I said I was going to alleviate your confusion, and here I am misspeaking. So, Leech Seed will deal 50 damage to Jirachi. 50 points of HP are going to be removed from that Jirachi's HP pool at the end of the turn. And that 50 points of HP is going straight to the Celebi, which means that it's going to heal about 12.4% of Celebi's health. Now, it's not exactly 12.5 because it doesn't deal exactly 12.5 to the Jirachi. Because of how the rounding works, in fact, Jirachi is going to be taking a little bit less than 12.5%. If they were both at 400 HP, which is divisible by 8, then they should be taking the full 12.5%, but that's still going to be 50 HP. So, yeah. Celebi heals exactly as much as it deals to Jirachi, which is going to be 12.4%. Now, let's take a look at this. We've got a 281 HP Sceptile versus a 714 HP Blissey. 714 is the maximum HP that Blissey can hit, so this is a 252 HP Blissey, which is not super duper common in this metagame, but it's possible. And then 281 is the no investment version of Sceptile. So Leech Seed is going to deal about 12.5% to Blissey, which is 89 damage. That means that Sceptile is going to heal 89 HP every time that Blissey takes that Leech Seed tick, which is going to be about 31% of Sceptile's health. So that means that Sceptile is going to heal 31%. You might think, well, wait a minute, like, you deal 12.5% to the opponent, how come you don't heal 12.5%? And that's because it has to do with the raw damage numbers. So Pokemon that have lower HP stats actually get a greater percentage of their HP when moves like Leech Seed are in effect. This is why you know, if you've never noticed, you Leech Seed something like a Blissey, you get a lot of healing. But if you Leech Seed something like a Dugtrio, you get basically no healing. Because of how that sort of raw damage versus percentage works. So I hope that was a little bit more, or explained a little bit better how that works. If you're still confused about it, maybe I can try to comment, but in any case, we're going to move on. Zets, you better not say anything about that again. The grass types in ADV. So these are all the Pokemon who are grass type and ranked UUBL or higher. So I think that this is going to be a little bit of an easier format to see all this stuff in. So, and also it's a little bit less work for me than to make my own graphics. So if you like this sort of thing, maybe I will try to use more of this and less of the writing out all the stats myself. If you don't like that, though, I can go back to putting the little portraits and having all the stats fly in from off screen and all that. But let's take a look at this. So Breloom is going to be the best physical attacker of the bunch. Celebi and Exeggutor have some pretty usable attack stats as well. Venusaur, Sceptile, you're going to need a little bit of work there, and Ludicolo, I mean, like, just forget about it. As for speed, Sceptile is clearly the fastest. Celebi is going to be the second. And the rest of the grass types are a little bit on the slower side. Venusaur is actually surprisingly at 80. I would think it would be slower just looking at it. But no, in fact, it has an 80 base speed. So that's kind of cool. As for special attack goes, Exeggutor is running away with it at a 125, but Sceptile's not too bad at 105, and then you have 100 for your Celebi and Venusaur. 90 is okay for Ludicolo, and 60 for Breloom is like maybe just enough for stab HP grass to threaten to 2-hit KO a Swampert. It probably does more than I'm giving it credit for, but yeah, it's not great. As for the defenses, Celebi is going to be the best all-around defensively. Venusaur's got some pretty decent special defense bulk, which is nice. It helps it to handle some of the water types. Granted, a lot of the water types are carrying Ice Beam, but you know, you do have some pretty good natural bulk to be able to take those coverage Ice Beams, at least as compared to the rest of these grass types who have some pretty middling bulk, which is, I mean, probably fine, because grass's strength is not really in its bulk because of the type chart. Granted, the offenses are not fantastic either, but I guess I'd rather have a strong Pokemon that hits certain types really hard than a defensive Pokemon that gets hit super effective by a lot of things. So, yeah. Now we're going to talk about some of the moves. So, all of these Pokemon get Leech Seed. That's really good. Leech Seed is a fantastic move. It forces a lot of switches. It's really good in conjunction with Spikes. So if you're ever wanting to run a Leech Seed Celebi or a Leech Seed Breloom or Leech Seed any of these Pokemon, really, I would recommend that you try it out with Spikes. I'm not saying that you have to have Spikes to make Leech Seed useful, but it works best when Spikes are up. Frankly, a lot of things work best when Spikes are up, so just use Spikes, is what I'm saying. Celebi gets the move Recover. None of the rest of these Pokemon do, but Venusaur, Exeggutor, and Ludicolo get Synthesis. Synthesis is a much worse version of Recover because I think it's only 8 PP. It gets a little bit of extra healing when Sun is up, but it gets less healing when Sand or Rain is up. So, in a metagame where Sand is the most common weather condition, even more common than having no weather condition, I would say, it's not a great move, but a healing move is a healing move, and you can't really say that that's bad to have. And if you do think that it's bad, then just don't use it. Which, I mean, frankly, I would say it's bad on most teams, but I digress. Breloom has Spore, which is a fantastic move, probably has an argument for being the best move in the game. 100% accurate sleep is really, really brutal. But Exeggutor and Venusaur both have sleep powders, so they have the opportunity to put the opponents to sleep as well. I didn't really bother to go through to see who has Sing or Grass Whistle, so somebody in the comments can let me know if one of these Pokemon does. But, I mean, those moves are really inaccurate, and frankly, if it's not Celebi using them, then you're probably just dying if you miss, so it's not great. Surprisingly, all of these Pokemon, except for Exeggutor, get Swords Dance. So, if you want to run that Swords Dance Brick Break Ludicolo, you certainly can. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can do that. The rest of these Pokemon do have, like, kind of a niche with Swords Dance. I would say that you're most likely to see it on Celebi trying to baton pass that Swords Dance boost to something else. But Breloom can use it, and with a 130 attack stat, like, that makes it a fantastic breaker, supposing that it doesn't get outsped, and supposing that you have the coverage move to hit whatever is in front of you. Breloom has a notoriously bad time trying to fit all the coverage that it wants on top of its utility moves that it wants. So some people would call that 4 move slot syndrome. I'm kind of not a fan of that term, but I understand like why people use it. So there you go. Venusaur is actually not terrible with Swords Dance. It gets some pretty good moves like Earthquake and Sludge Bomb to make use of its physical attack stats. So it actually is not too bad with that Swords Dance boost. In fact, Exeggutor could be decent with it. You know, it could use that signature move Barrage, which is like 20 base power or something terrible like that. So no, you don't really want that. But Swords Dance Explosion would be insane. But unfortunately, Exeggutor does not get Swords Dance, so we don't have that to go for us. Celebi is going to be basically the king or queen or monarch. I don't know what the proper term for Celebi would be. I think it's genderless, so we're going to say the monarch of moves here. It's the only one that has access to any of Calm Mind, Baton Pass, or Heal Bell, and none of these Pokemon get Aromatherapy. Now, there are grass types that do get Aromatherapy, like Vileplume, for example, but they're all UU ranked or lower, so we're going to not talk about them so much. Not to say that they can't be used, but they're not UUBL ranked for a reason, so... but I think there's one particular signature move that we all want to know about, and that's going to be Venusaur's Frenzy Plant. Okay, no, that's not true. We want to know about Sceptile's signature move, Leaf Blade, which is 70 base power, 24 PP, so it's literally Hidden Power Grass. But it has some benefits that Hidden Power Grass doesn't. Like, for example, you don't have to mess with your EVs, or your IVs to get the move that you want out of it. You can simply just run 31s across the board and be fine with that. Leaf Blade also has a higher critical hit ratio, so it's twice as likely to crit. Unfortunately, it's contact, so anytime you run into Pikachu, you have a chance to get paralyzed by static, which is... honestly, it's not very much of a consideration. There are very few Pokemon that have these abilities that punish you for going for contact moves. Breloom is one of them. Effect Spore can be kind of nasty, and it can get you, I think, a second sleep as well, which is brutal, but it's not very likely to happen. Actually, I'm not sure if that's true. Maybe the Sleep Claws mod comes in and stops that from happening. Somebody will have to let me know how that works in the simulator. But Sceptile's Leaf Blade is really nice because it allows you to run a different hidden power, which most of these grass types are either going to have to pick between a lower damage and much lower PP Giga Drain, or hit so that it can maintain coverage, or they're just going to have to bite the bullet and go for Hidden Power Grass, which is going to limit their coverage options. So that's good to know. Frenzy Plant, of course, is a move that exists. It's basically Grass-type Hyper Beam. I think it might be a little bit less base power. I'm not exactly sure if it's 140 or 150, but Venusaur can use it. Meganium can also use it. Unfortunately, Sceptile cannot use it. You probably have seen a poll on my channel, maybe, that is coming out. In fact, none of the Gen 3 starters get these starter signature moves, which is very strange because this is the generation that introduced them. They didn't even want to give it to the Pokemon that were from this generation. I don't know if that's just, it was like an oversight, or maybe Fire Red and Leaf Green were in development for longer than Ruby and Sapphire. I don't think that's true, but I don't know, maybe. And they didn't know that these starters were gonna exist. It's probably not true though, so I really don't know why they don't get them, but it's kind of an interesting piece of trivia. So, does Sceptile stand out from all these grass types? Well, it has a higher than average attack, or special attack stat, I should say. 105 is not bad. I mean, there are a lot of really good Pokemon, really good attackers in this tier that do not have even quite a 100 base special attack stat. Take like Suicune, for example. Now, a lot of these Pokemon do get the means to boost their special attack, whereas Sceptile does not, really. So, there's kind of a give and take there. But Sceptile also has a really high speed stat. Not very many Pokemon have that, so you can't take that away from Sceptile. So it can function kind of like a grass-type cleaner. Now, as we kind of saw with how many types resist grass, there's not a great argument for grass in particular as a cleaner, but, there are some teams that are stacking up the sort of grass weaknesses, particularly ones that have a lot of sand immunities on them. Both rock and ground are immune to sand, but they're also both weak to grass. So you might see a team that has something like Swampert and Claydol and Tyranitar all on the one team. So you can hit 3 of the Pokemon on that team for super effective damage, which is, I think you can accept not being able to hit very many Pokemon for super effective damage, or really even just neutrally effective damage, if you run into a team like that. Now, not every team is like that, so take that with a grain of salt. Sceptile's signature move, Leaf Blade, is going to allow you to basically have Hidden Power Grass without having to sacrifice the coverage. So that's kind of nice. I think I mentioned that on the previous slide, but it's it bears repeating, we'll say. And with its high speed and kind of middling HP, Sceptile's actually really good at Sub-Seed stalling. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at that particular set, but this is, like, arguably what Sceptile is best at doing, or I should say it's better at doing than any other Pokemon in the tier. Okay, maybe Jump Bluff, we can have that argument, but Sceptile is really good at doing that. So that's all really nice for Sceptile. But do I have any sort of concluding remarks? Well, of course I do. Sceptile's got some good stats and some good moves, but it's kind of held back by the limitation of grass due to how unbalanced the type chart is. So, yeah, I mean it's not good looks for Sceptile. But don't worry, keep your head up, champ. We're gonna talk about the sets that we see you run, or at least that Smogon has seen you run. So this is the Sub-Seed set, which is kind of like a stall set. It's kind of interesting because I wouldn't say that Sceptile fits well on a stall team, but this particular set is good at isolating certain Pokemon and stalling them out. So you have Leaf Blade, Leech Seed, Substitute. Basically, you need all of those, and then you can choose between Hidden Power Ice or Fire, depending on what coverage is more important for your team. Now, with this particular set, you want to run as much speed as possible and not very much HP if you can help it. So why would you want to do that? Well, we're going to see a little bit of the discussion here. Sceptile is one of the most annoying stall Pokemon in the game. The strategy is to use Leech Seed, then set up a Substitute, which drains the opponent's health and prevents it from harming Sceptile. So the Substitute is going to block the hit, right? And there are very, very few Pokemon that run multi-hit moves in this generation. So, for the most part, you're going to be able to just, on faith, put up a Substitute and then guarantee that your Pokemon's not taking any more damage than that until the Substitute is broken. I.e., until the next turn. If the likes of Skarmory or Salamence show up, you can use your Hidden Power to hit them. So, Hidden Power Fire is going to deal a little bit of damage to Skarmory, not very much. It's probably going to be able to roar you out for the most part, but I think it is in about 3 hit KO range, so it's not bad. Definitely rather be able to 3 hit KO Skarmory than not be able to KO it at all. And then Salamence, of course, the Hidden Power Ice is going to do a lot of damage. Depending on the Mence set, you would OHKO, but there are, the Dragon Dance set, which runs a little bit more HP investment, has a decent chance to survive, so it's actually not nice. This set makes Blissey cry, and with a few predictions, Leaf Blade can hit the switch-in hard as Blissey switches out. So the reason why Blissey cries is sort of what we explained on our previous slide, is that the Leech Seed onto Blissey is going to heal upwards of 25 to 30% to Sceptile, which means that you're going to get basically all of the HP back for spending the Substitute. So that means that Blissey effectively just cannot even touch Sceptile. Sceptile gets its sub up as Blissey comes in. You get the Leech Seed off. Blissey breaks your Substitute with Ice Beam or Seismic Toss, and you heal all of that HP back. So you can set another Substitute, and you will, if Blissey stays in to break your sub, you're just getting all of that HP back. And that's sort of the whole concept behind this set, is that because you're faster than almost everything in the game, you're going to be able to get your Substitute off first. And then if your opponent allows you to get a Substitute without straight up breaking it, you can get a Leech Seed off on them, and then you can just kind of cycle this. And for the majority of cases, you are going to heal a little bit more than not necessarily more than the substitute damage, but you're going to heal most of that substitute damage back. So you can keep subbing up, and especially if there's no sand, you'll just get leftovers, chip healing, and all that. Although I would say that this set is particularly good in sand because it mitigates your opponent's ability to heal with their leftovers. So yeah, that's good. This set gains dramatically in effectiveness with a few layers of spikes down, because Leech Seed forces the opponent to switch, but spikes discourages them from switching. It puts your opponent in a catch-22 situation. If you don't know what a catch-22 is, you should read that book. I think Joseph Heller is the author. It's a great book. I thought it was one of the funniest books I read in high school, so I would recommend it. The IVs given are for HP Ice, which I think this is a vestige of Smogon's strategy decks changing its sort of presentation, because it doesn't show the IVs that it suggests on this set. But yeah, basically whatever showdown kind of defaults for you when you put HP Ice in is probably what they would suggest. There is no spread that gives you a maximum speed IV for Hidden Power Fire, so if you do that, then keep that in mind, that you will probably not be able to outspeed Dugtrio if it's running a Jolly Nature and max investment. Although sometimes, like I said, Dugtrio wants to run some bulk, in which case it's going to divest from its speed, so you can still outspeed that version of Dugtrio, even if you're running Hidden Power Fire. So yeah, keep all that in mind. Regardless, you can lower Sceptile's HP IV to 3 if you prefer, which allows Sceptile to have a 70 base power hidden power and maximize the percent healing that it gets from Leech Seed. So, like, we talked about the concept of Sceptile having a much lower HP stat than Blissey and getting a higher percentage healing. You can kind of take that to its logical extreme and reduce Sceptile's HP as low as possible, which means that you steal from its IVs. And that means that you'll get the greatest percentage healing per Leech Seed tick that is possible, which means that against Pokemon that are not Blissey, you're getting even more percentage back, so that you're offsetting the substitute damage that you're dealing to yourself. So that is one thing you can do. Now, keep in mind, the lower your HP stat is, the less good you are at taking hits from Pokemon. So, for example, there might be an Ice Beam out there that is doing like 97% to Sceptile. And if you reduce your speed, your HP IVs, then maybe now it's going to be doing like 103 maximum. So keep that in mind if you try that. As for like, keep a 70 base hidden power. This is a really advanced concept in the advanced generation. Hidden power, the base power that it has is actually somewhat dependent on what IVs you have. I think you have to have a certain number, like if you add, or the sum of all your IVs to achieve a 70 base power. If you actually go down to, say, 2 HP IVs and then whatever configuration to get Hidden Power Ice, you would have a 69 base power Hidden Power. So yes, you can go even lower on your HP, but then you're sacrificing some base power, which is not advisable. So yeah, there is a calculator that can help you figure that out if you want to do something strange like that. But I would say for the most part, you don't have to worry about that. Just use whatever the whatever Smogon suggests for you, and you'll be fine. So yeah, Smogon's End Perk at Home, which is going to be this Endeavor Sub-Pitaya Berry Sceptile. So this is very similar in concept to the Endeavor Salac Swampert, except because we're so fast already, we don't need that Salac Berry. We're just going to run Pitaya, which is going to increase our special attack. So Leaf Blade, a Hidden Power, Endeavor, and Substitute. So unless your opponent has some first-rate maneuvering with Tyranitar, this Pokemon will take out at least one other foe. The idea is that you're going to substitute down to 1 HP, and then you're going to click Endeavor. Endeavor is a move that sets your opponent's HP to the same HP that you're at. So when you substitute all the way down to 1 HP, then your opponent is going to just have to take that Endeavor and go down to 1 HP themselves. And then because Sceptile is most likely faster, you can go for Leaf Blade and deal like the very small bit of damage that they have left. So that's really good. Unless you are really afraid of Aerodactyl, you're gonna go with Pitaya Berry. I guess you could go for Salic if you want to outspeed literally everything in the tier. Aerodactyl, Jolteon, freaking Electrode. But it's not super necessary. So this is going to synergize really well with the Overgrow ability. Because you're putting yourself down to 1 HP, you're going to be below 25%, which means that Leaf Blade is going to get that boost, which is really nice. A crit Overgrow boosted Leaf Blade is going to kill a lot of things. But of course, you don't necessarily want to just rely on crit as being our only out. So, and then I've seen this used on Weather Clear teams, which is a pretty sensible idea. The issue with this particular set as compared to End Pert is that you take Sandstorm damage. So if you substitute yourself down to 1 HP and Sand is up, then basically you're just going to die. So that's not great. Weather Clear can be really nice to pair with this so that you can ensure that you're not going to die to Sand. And then I've seen this used with Shell Bell, which is kind of awkward. So the idea with Shell Bell is that you heal, I believe, a quarter or an eighth. I think actually an eighth of the damage that you deal. So the idea is that you substitute all the way down to 1 HP, and then you click Endeavor on something. And then let's say something is Blissey, who has, I think, like 651 HP if it's not invested at all, which is the most common Blissey set. That means you're going to deal 650 damage, and an eighth of 650, if I can get my little calculator going here, is going to be 81.25, but round down, of course. So you're going to heal 81 HP, which is going to be about like 25% for your Sceptile, which means that you can go for another substitute if you want, which is maybe a good idea. I don't know. It means that you might be out of Overgrow range, though. So I don't know if you'll even finish off the Blissey with Leaf Blade. I mean, you're putting it down to, 1 HP, it gets leftovers healing. You should be able to do 7% or so to Blissey with Leaf Blade, I would think. So, might actually be a not bad, but what ended up happening, I think, is I would switch to something else that takes the Leaf Blade quite well, and then the Sceptile has to awkwardly bring itself back down to 1 HP, and then you switch around, and it's like it's a little awkward. If you can manage to get this sort of set to work with Shell Bell, I'd be very interested to see it, but I think that Pitaya is probably going to be better in most situations. And then these sets, I kind of don't think they're real. Maybe they existed at some point, but I don't think I've seen them since. Since I started playing the game anyway. Swords Dance Mixed is, I guess, an interesting idea. You have Leaf Blade or Thunder Punch for coverage. I guess it depends on what you want to hit harder, either Swampert or Gyarados. And then you have Hidden Power Flying and Brick Break coverage. Hidden Power Flying is kind of nice because it will kill a Breloom or a Heracross. It also hits other grass types. Good to know. And then Brick Break is going to be the best for hitting your normal types and things like Tyranitar, who are super duper weak to them. But I don't know if I think this is like worth using. You Swords Dance, and it's like, all right, you have a pretty good attack stat Sceptile, who's pretty fast, but like, I mean, there are so many other Choice Banders or Dragon Dancers who can kind of accomplish this effect better, and they're not going to be as frail as Sceptile is. You know, Sceptile has to get a Swords Dance off, which means that, you know, it's going to probably take a hit, which it's not really well built to do that, so keep that in mind. All Out Mixed Sweeper is going to do the Bolt Beam coverage with Thunder Punch and Hidden Power Ice. Leaf Blade, of course, because Leaf Blade is just that move. And Focus Punch. So this is kind of like Charizard at home, where you are basically a special attacker, but you have Focus Punch so that you can hit Blissey trying to soft boiled, or like Tyranitar on a switch in. I don't even think this Focus Punch would 2-hit KO most Blissey. So yeah, I don't know if I like this set. I think it's a little bit not great. But I'm going to show you my set, and you can tell me that it's not great. This is basically Celebi at home, which is Leech 3 attacks Sceptile. So the idea with this sort of set is we're taking the same concept as Celebi, where we're going to have a lot of coverage to be able to hit a lot of things. And then when we think a thing is going to switch into us that we can't hit, we're going to try to Leech Seed it. Leech Seed is great because it gives you a lot of momentum, because you're going to switch to something that handles them. If they stay in, you're just going to heal off the damage that they dealt to you. And if they switch out, well, then you don't have to deal with that thing anymore. So that's good. The Leaf Blade on this Sceptile is going to miss out on 2-hit KOs on Suicune and Milotic. It's really unfortunate that it happens to be this way. If Sceptile just had 10 more base special attack, or 10 more base attack on Leaf Blade, if it was an 80 base power move, for example, it becomes a 90 base power move in later generations, but it's also physical, so that's not great. At least for Sceptile. It's great for a lot of grass-type physical attackers, but I digress. Because of this, you're just missing out on a lot of these 2-hit KOs that you would like to get. In fact, you're also missing out on some 1-hit KOs, particularly on something like Swampert, who runs if the Swampert is running a lot of special defense for some reason. It can live Leaf Blade, which is not cool. Stab with 105 special attack, 4 times super effective, that's just kill, right? But it is what it is. So, yeah. You could run Modest, and you would have a chance to 2-hit KO Suicune. Milotic is going to be, like, not really a chance to 2-hit KO it, but, I mean, I think you do have a chance, but not a great one. So, yeah. But, yeah, it's just weird. It's unfortunate. I wish Leaf Blade was a little bit stronger, and it would give Sceptile a little bit more of a niche if it was, because you would have by far the strongest grass type move in the game, whereas yes, this is like the strongest grass type move, like other than Frenzy Plant in theory, but Celebi is so close in special attack, and Hidden Power Grass does the same damage, so, or has the same base power, so it's like, unfortunate situation. We have Thunder Punch here, which is going to OHKO Gyarados, 2-hit KO Aerodactyl, Moltres, and Zard. Not super duper relevant on like Aerodactyl, like you're going to have to catch it switching in, or it's going to have to be locked into something like Earthquake, because as you can see, Sceptile is really frail, especially on the physical side, so Aerodactyl is probably just going to pack it up if it uses any other move. And then you have a 3-hit KO on standard Skarmory, which is not bad, actually. And then with the chance to paralyze the Skarm as well, like, you could do worse for a coverage move. And then we have Hidden Power Ice, which is going to OHKO the offensive Mence and Flygon sets. You have rolls to kill a DD Mence or a defensive Flygon, which is not fantastic. Once again, kind of showing that Sceptile is just a little bit shy of getting what it needs to do done. If it had that 115 special attack, it would be so much better. If you could steal from the physical attack, that would be great, but it is what it is. And then an option that you could try here, and in fact, when I was playing with Sceptile, it seemed like there were a lot of people experimenting with Sceptile at the same time. Don't know if they knew that I was going to make a Sceptile video, but Pursuit is a move that Sceptile gets. It's really nice at getting the trap off on particularly Pokemon that are weak to grass, like Starmie is a great example. Starmie doesn't really want to stay in and take a fast Leaf Blade, so it's going to switch a lot of the time. And if you predict that, you can get Pursuit off and do a lot of damage to Starmie, which means that, you know, it might not be able to switch into Spikes or something later. So that's good to know. I saw it do a lot of damage to a Cloyster that was switching out, which was kind of impressive. But I think getting Dugtrio is really nice as well. Dugtrio's got really low defenses, so Pursuit is going to do a really hefty amount to it, so it's really nice. As for Gengar, I mean, Gengar that doesn't anticipate that you have Pursuit is probably going to stay in anyway, so I don't know if it's going to be really good at doing that. I mean, it could finish off a Gengar that has been left low. Say, for example, you have Pursuit Tyranitar on the team. You also have Pursuit Sceptile. You can double up and guarantee that the Gengar is dead. So, I mean, it's something. I think that you could try Crunch with a Pursuit Sceptile, and that could do some pretty good work. I think Crunch is most likely going to 2-hit KO Gengar, which means that Crunch plus Pursuit on the switch out is going to get there, and a lot of Gengar are not going to want to stay in on Sceptile that has revealed Crunch, even if, I mean, mostly because a lot of people don't realize that Sceptile gets Pursuit. Now, maybe after this video is dropped, people are going to realize it a little more, but we're going to hope that they forget, because I'm actually not going to be using Pursuit on my Sceptiles going forward here. But let's see the team. Oh wait, actually, before we go to the team, the 28 in special defense and the speed, I should explain. Or in regular defense, I think I said specials. You know what I mean. 366 is going to outspeed Tyranitar by 2 points, which means that we're going to outspeed all the Dugtrio that are trying to outspeed it by 1 point. So that's good to know. And we'll also outspeed Timid, Starmie, and Raikou by more than 2 points, in fact 5, but I guess good to know that. And then the rest of this is going to go into defense. Why? Well, that means that if a Jolly Dugtrio traps us and goes for HP Bug, which is the strongest move it has to hit, it only has a 1 in 8 to get the roll that it needs to OHKO Sceptile in the sand. So that means that if we have a full health Sceptile and opponent goes to Dugtrio and tries to kill us, well, for the most part, we're going to be able to Leaf Blade and kill them, and then usually we'll live sand. So even if Tyranitar comes in after that, we'll be fine. So, yeah. You could put it in special defense if you want slightly better odds to live, like a Spike plus Ice Beam from something like Starmie or Suicune or even Milotic. But, I mean, it is what it is. I don't think a lot of those Pokemon are switching into Sceptile, and if you're switching into them, you're going to have a really good position. So, let's look at this team structure. So, I want to give credit to Georgie, I don't know how you say this player's name, but they're a player who was in SPL, who I think used this exact 6. But I also want to give credit to Mint Yerb, who showed me a team very similar to this. I think it had 5 of the same Pokemon. I don't believe it had Sceptile. And that was where I pulled a lot of the spreads for this. Of course, I tetrafoliumed it up a little bit. We have a slightly different Claydol and Registeel set. In fact, the Registeel set is the same as I used in my Registeel video. So good to know that I can still splash some of the sets that I used in other teams onto teams like this. I mean, we can have an argument about whether or not that's actually an optimal Registeel spread, but I think it's pretty good, alright? I used it. I got to 1650 with it, so... not that most of you are probably listening to that and saying that's not very, very impressive. You got to 1800 10 years ago, in fact. But this team here, I'm calling it Co-Sept, just to shout out the 2 featured Pokemon on it, I guess. Registeel is cool too. While Celebi would probably fit better in the Sceptile slot, and I think in fact the Mint Yerb team that this is kind of based on the Gorgie team who actually does have Sceptile. Mint Yerbs I think has Celebi here, but we can't get the achievement if we use Celebi, so we have to use Sceptile. It provides us some additional support against Dragon Dance Tyranitar and unboosted Gyarados, because we have that Thunder Punch. Whereas Celebi is going to be a lot worse into a Dragon Dance Tyranitar or just Gyarados in general. So, yeah, there's maybe the use case for Sceptile there. We have a lead Adamant Lum Dragon Dance Tyranitar, which is a freaking mouthful, that starts the game very aggressively versus other leads, particularly Zapdos. And then Claydol and Registeel are going to be our defensive core. You have to play pretty proactively versus DD sweepers because these DD sweepers are going to do a lot of damage to Registeel or Claydol switching in. So what you'll see generally with this team is I end up switching to one of these two against a DD sweeper, and I'm threatening to explode right in their face. So if I can navigate that turn correctly, then we can handle some of these DD sweepers. That being said, if you let something like a Salamence get a free DD off, it's going to be a little bit of trouble. Registeel can probably live a +1 Earthquake. Salamence can switch in, I guess, but like it's not looking good. We have a high SPDEF investment Penguin Mence, which honestly you'll see a lot of these replays, and I'm actually not Penguin Mence. Penguin Mence is Dragon Dance, Brick Break, Earthquake, and Rock Slide. So the reason why I have that is I want that Slide Quake coverage, and you would generally see Hidden Power Flying as the last move, but this team is particularly weak to Blissey. So I'm actually opting to run Brick Break in some of these replays. In fact, the run that got me to 1650, I was using Brick Break on Salamence with no HP flying. So that I can hit the Blissey better. Because otherwise, like, we basically have to boom on the Blissey, because Raikou not going to beat it, Sceptile's not going to beat it. Tyranitar, okay, Tyranitar can beat Blissey, but this Tyranitar set is probably not going to stay around for too long. So I wouldn't bank on it being the Blissey check. Yeah. But the primary goal with this team is going to be to remove Dugtrio and Blissey so that we can allow Raikou the chance to sweep. And Sceptile is pretty good at helping with the Dugtrio removal. At least it's threatening that strong Leaf Blade and might outspeed Dugtrio as well. In fact, we're going to outspeed pretty much every Dugtrio that's not max speed. So that's good to know. Alright, now it's time to get into the replays. We'll start here against this guy, Mikhail Tar. I think this particular replay is the first one where I fought an opponent who was above 1650. I think at the time I was like, yeah, 1455. Great matchmaking, by the way, Showdown. Thank you for that. But as we know, I'm better than 1455 as a gamer at this point. Come on now. We'll start with the gym leader music here. I think actually we'll just roll with that the whole way through. I think this gym theme is really nice. I love the counterpoint, and you know what? We can't be spending time talking about the music. We're going into the game. So on this particular replay, I guess I decided I wanted to lead Registeel. I think that lead Tyranitar is probably better, but lead Registeel has its use cases. Of course, if you watch my Registeel video, you might see where Registeel could be good in the lead slot. And yeah, I made a bunch of little tweaks to this team climbing up, which I think is probably the way that you should be messing with a team to climb to the top. Like, you're not going to get it perfect on the first try with most teams, unless you're, like, literally the GOAT at team building. I guess Vapicuno. But, yeah, you're going to want to iterate on your team, make little tweaks as you go to sort of give yourself better chances against the metagame. So I'm going to go straight for counter against Tyranitar, which is not good. Revealing that against Swampert means that Swampert's going to be wary to go for a Earthquake into my Registeel, which is a big, or I should say it's one of the big ways that I tend to eliminate Swampert with this team. Against this Skarmory, I managed to get a Thunder Punch off, and I go for a Leech Seed to get some extra damage. I go for Leaf Blade there, predicting maybe Swampert to want to switch back in, or maybe Tyranitar. But instead I catch a Celebi, who is going to take that pretty well, although I do get a critical hit, so that's kind of nice. I will go to Claydol here, who can spin these hazards away. I take not so much from an Ice Punch from Jirachi, which is nice. And then I'll go for Earthquake as Skarmory comes back in. Now Skarmory is going to want to Spike. And I can't really stay in because I don't have a means to play around a Toxic. This Skarmory taunts me, so I can't Thunder Wave it, which is not good. I'm just going to have to take Seismic Toss Chip here. But at this stage, I'm thinking that this Skarmory probably does not have Protect. You can't really fit Protect on that set because you want Roar as the last move. But I don't know, I guess maybe they don't have Roar. We'll see. Or maybe we won't, I'm not sure. This Swampert goes for Protect and then Surf, which indicates to me that this is a mono pert, so it actually doesn't even have Earthquake for me to take advantage of with my counter. So I'm just going to go straight for Seismic Tosses. I will eventually beat the Swampert if it tries to stay in on me. Jirachi comes in and Substitute as I try to go for a greedy Thunder Wave, which is not great. I'm going to have to try to Seismic Toss this down. And depending on what Jirachi it is, I might not be able to win with my Registeel here. If I get Fire Punched, that's really bad. But, like, I can't really switch to anything. So, it actually reveals to be Thunderbolt Jirachi, which is most commonly going to be paired with a Ice Punch. So, that's fine. That means Thunderbolt is the best move that it has to hit me. So I'm just going to hope that I don't get paralyzed. Of course I do, right there as I say it. Commentator's Curse, which is hilarious because this game is already well gone and past. But it is what it is. We're just going to take these Thunderbolts. Hopefully we don't get full parried. We can probably beat this Jirachi if we don't. Every turn that it goes for Substitute is a turn that it's not attacking me. So that's really nice. It's only getting the Thunderbolt off every other turn, which means I'm effectively getting 12% healing. It's doing about 25%. So it's really only doing half of what it's displaying that it does. My opponent is going to switch to Swampert here. I'm just going to kind of keep the same game plan where I'm just going to spam Seismic Toss. It's been working out so far. How many Seismic Tosses did I used 16 Seismic Tosses. How many times have you guys used Seismic Toss in a game? I've definitely seen a lot used when I'm using like a slower paced team. This team is like not really slow paced, but it is with it. It is like I would say balance, maybe a little bit more on the offensive side. Most ADV teams are a little more on the offensive side. I do get a nice explosion off on the Swampert there. Explosion was really to make sure that this Tyranitar doesn't get too far ahead with the Dragon Dances. I get the boom off, and then Sceptile should be faster than it, as we discussed earlier. But we're going to have to go to Sceptile here to sort of deal with this Swampert. I do manage to get a nice HP Ice on the Celebi switch, but it only does 33%, which if this Celebi has Recover, is just going to get completely recovered off. But it does mean that I can go to Salamence here as I take an HP Fire. And I think on this particular team, I did have HP flying on my Salamence, so that's nice. HP flying is going to be a lot better into teams that have Celebi or Heracross, which you miss out on with Penguin Mence. And this team it would like some support against Celebi because it doesn't have the best options to kill Celebi, to be frank. But if you're going to pick to not be able to beat Celebi or not be able to pick or beat Blissey, I think you should pick to not be able to beat Celebi because Blissey is just really, really tough to deal with. There's an argument maybe that instead of dropping HP Fly, you could drop like Earthquake, but then you're a little bit tougher into things like Jirachi and Metagross, which are also not super duper great for this team to beat. You know, some would say that this is a bad team. And, you know, I don't necessarily disagree, but, like, this is supposed to be a challenge team, so, like, I'm not H-clad. I can't just get every UUBL that I want to 1650, so, yeah. Sceptile does manage to threaten that Moltres out because it knows I have Thunder Punch. I think it probably could have lived it if it stayed in, but, instead, we're going to pick off the Jirachi there, and Sceptile's done a lot of good work for me. I go to Tyranitar and get the Earthquake, and I don't get the roll needed to kill that Tyranitar. But I do put it in, well, good enough range to go for Double Edge, which hits the Moltres pretty hard on the switch-in. I can go to Salamence here on HP Grass, which is really nice. I figured that it would be too risky for my opponent to go for Will-O-Wisp, because if my Tyranitar stays in, then Moltres is just going to die even if it gets the burn off. So, yeah, that's not great. I can just keep going for Hidden Power against the Swampert, assuming that it doesn't have a move to hit me, but it does reveal to have Ice Beam, which is not great, but Raikou has Hidden Power Grass, and we're going to just clean up the game here, because nothing can live a Thunderbolt after the Swampert goes down. So, there we go. We get a nice win there. 31 points for the Agency Pyramids, which, by the way, is the alt that I'm playing on. I played on a fresh account to try to get all the way up to 1650. I think that's the concept behind the challenge, because otherwise, I don't know, you would just ladder to 1650 with whatever team you want and then just win one game with 3 UBLs on it, which is not nearly as impressive as going from a fresh account. I went from 1,000 ELO all the way to 1650, not without some roadblocks and hiccups, but using pretty much the same team. I did at one point try Glalie on the team, because I was like, oh, I need spikes to make this work, and no. Do not do that. Glailie's not a terrible Pokemon, but it's not good on this team. Medicham is in, so I'm going to switch straight to Mence here. I don't know if I still have HP Flying. I probably still do. Yes, I do. As Medicham is going to go for Focus Punch, meaning that it probably doesn't have Rock Slide, because I think Rock Slide would have done more. Or maybe it was trying to just mid-ground. Anticipating a switch, I'm going to Dragon Dance with my Mence, and Rock Slide should be doing a lot here. It actually just straight up kills the Zapdos, so that was an offensive Zapdos. And because I'm not dropping, or maybe, okay, I don't know if I have Earthquake here. Maybe I chose Brick Break over Earthquake, but I don't think that Earthquake would kill Metagross outright, so I do switch the Mence out to preserve it for later. Registeel is going to be a fine switch into Meteor Mash, but we're going to see a switch to Medicham as I went for Thunder Wave. It gets rid of that Medicham's item there. I tried to go for counter, anticipating that the Medicham would want to go for Brick Break, but it gets its Focus Punch off on me instead, which is really not cool. Sceptile's in goes for Leaf Blade into Celebi, which does basically nothing. I am going to go for HP Ice to force this Celebi to have to recover, as I can get a free switch into something. I go for another one there, which was maybe a little bit greedy. I probably should have just switched to Tyranitar there. But now I'm going to switch to Tyranitar. They do recover again, so I'm not punished. They go for Leech Seed, which is communicating to me that they're mono Celebi. They only have Psychic. But since that's the case, there's nothing really stopping me from going for another Dragon Dance, and now I should be outspeeding pretty much everything on their team, and I'm threatening to kill pretty much everything as well. Metagross is not going to live a +2 Adamant Earthquake, but Celebi will, as it switches in. I have, I believe, Double Edge on this Tyranitar, so I don't actually have a move that will necessarily kill the Celebi. I go for Rock Slide, because it's probably just about as good damage as anything. And it mid-grounds a lot of switches, but Magneton will switch in. I go for Earthquake, trying to get it, as it protects and chip heals a lot, which is not great for me. And then Celebi's going to switch back to Magneton as I go for Double Edge, and I finally get the kill there, but it will cost my Tyranitar. I'm fine with that, though, because I got a lot of value out of Tyranitar. Metagross goes for Meteor Mash, and that seems to be banded damage. And I'm just going to have to sack the Claydol. Now Raikou could come in, though, because this Metagross is in range of Thunderbolt. I will go for Calm Mind, though, because it's locked into Meteor Mash, and that shouldn't kill my Raikou, who resists the hit. And now this Tyranitar is kind of forced to go for Earthquake, because you can't let me Calm Mind again, or T-Bolt or anything like that. So I get a nice pivot there. I will pivot back to Sceptile, who should outspeed Tyranitar, but I don't really do a lot of damage to it. So I will go for a Leech Seed here. If it kills me, then that's fine, because I can go back to Mence, cycle another Intimidate on it, and if I cycle enough Intimidates, then I can get it low enough so that Raikou can just get a Calm Mind boost in its face. Or, if this Tyranitar is not a max speed Tyranitar, I can kind of subseed away with the Raikou, which is kind of an interesting synergy with this team. But instead I will just go to Salamence, who takes an HP bug pretty well. Get some healing back as well. I'm going to switch back to Sceptile, who takes the Rock Slide, and unfortunately we're in Sand range and die. But that means I can go to Salamence, and now this is a -1 Tyranitar, who allows my Raikou to switch in. Now this Tyranitar is basically going to have to go for Earthquake here. Which would suck because my Tyranitar switching in, or my Mence switching in, would put it at -2. So my opponent is going to switch, and anticipating, in fact, that my opponent was going to think all of that and switch, I get a substitute up with my Raikou. It also would have covered if they went for Rock Slide, anticipating my Mence to come in. But yeah, that's nice. And actually, I guess I lied before, because this we do not get the kill on this Metagross with Thunderbolt, but I end up going for Calm Mind here. The idea that I had was, well, if I Calm Mind, then I can sub up in front of Celebi, who can't break it, who probably can't break it with a Psychic, because it's probably a very low investment on, or at least low special attack investment. And if this Metagross kills me, then I could go to Salamence. It's locked in to Earthquake, and I can just get a Dragon Dance, and that should just win the game right here. Because +1 Earthquake is going to kill Tyranitar at this stage. And if you pivot to Celebi, well, then I'm just going to kill that with Hidden Power Flying, which I think I've revealed, yes. So, in fact, I think it's just going to die anyway. And now you have a 4% Metagross in versus my +1/+1 Salamence, and I win the game. So I found the line that won. I think if my opponent played a little bit more for mid-grounds with the Tyranitar, they probably could have won this game with that Dragon Dance Tyranitar. +2 speed is really difficult to handle, but I managed to get all the plays right to sort of find my out here, so that was really nice. I'm up against ADV Trey Young. Any Hawks fans in the chat? Probably not, but if you are, I guess shout outs to you. I go Tyranitar, and they have lead Blaziken, which is, well, that's very strange. I'm going to Mence to cycle and Intimidate as they substitute. There is a chance they could have HP Grass here, so I'm going to switch to Registeel, who takes a fat Fire Blast, which is not nice. So Yeah, I'm going to have to go back to Mence, who takes a Fire Blast. Not quite as fat, but I'm risking getting burned, which is not cool. I'm going to go for Hidden Power Flying. And they are going to reveal Hidden Power Ice there, which is like, what the hell, dude? that's really effed up. I go for Calm Mind as they Focus Punch me, but thankfully I take that pretty well. So, not so bad. Can't let them Focus Punch me again, though, so I'm going to Thunderbolt. So they go to Dragonite here. If I have HP Ice, I could kill this, but I don't, so I'm switching out. Dragonite's going to go for Dragon Dance. Can you see how bold this player is? They're just calling me out. They're like, yeah, this guy just does not have the tech to beat me. They go for another Dragon Dance as I explode on the Dragonite because I'm like, I'm not letting this Dragonite just run away with the game right here. As they reveal their own Raikou, and this is like, whoa, they're also on that 3 UUBLs challenge. They're at 1666 at the time of playing this game, so they would have, if they laddered all the way up with this team, they made it. I go for Leech Seed. The Raikou dodges and gets a crit and a para, puts me in sand range and kills. So thank you for all that. Sceptile showing its worth there. My opponent switches to Marowak, who takes the Earthquake pretty well, and if I didn't have Double Edge, then it was, I think, a roll to even get there, and if I lost Tyranitar, I would just lose the game. But Smeargle's coming in, and now I'm seeing like, whoa, this is like everything on this team is UUBL. But I have the perfect Tyranitar set to counter this Smeargle. As it goes for Spore, I have Lumberry. I just get my Dragon Dance off, and then they reveal Lastmon Vaporeon. I'm going to switch to Registeel, who should take a Surf from a defensive Vaporeon, but instead they're going to Roar, which puts me into Raikou, which is the perfect Pokemon to be in versus this Vaporeon, as I can just go for a Thunderbolt and kind of beat this Vaporeon. But I identify that if I kill this Vaporeon with my Raikou, then it's going to be Raikou versus Raikou. I'm extremely low. They can just go for a bunch of Calm Minds. I can match boosts, but they'll kill me before I kill them. And then if they kill my Tyranitar, then that's really bad. So I actually go to Registeel with the idea that I'm going to blow up on Vaporeon if that stays in, or blow up on Raikou if that gets past the boost, so that I can have my Tyranitar in, and this Raikou should not be able to kill me with Thunderbolt, unless they crit. And then I can go for Earthquake, and I don't think that crit mattered. I'm adamant, and they just forfeit right there. So this is a really cool team by them. If they manage to get all the way to 1666 with this team, that's really, really cool. This might have been like a Speed Pass idea. I could see that with the Smeargle, but I managed to navigate to a win on that one, even though my Sceptile got completely hacked and didn't really do anything. Honestly, if you guys are keeping track of all these replays, Sceptile's not really doing that much in them, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think that Sceptile's really all that good. There are some Pokemon that I will use, like these lower ranked ones, that manage to do some really cool things, and like I'm like, oh, like if it wasn't exactly this Pokemon, it wouldn't be able to do that. I'm not getting that vibe from Sceptile so much. It is really nice into these DD Tyranitars to be able to threaten to at least get some damage off on them, but like it's not doing that much for us. So we'll see if that kind of changes here. Against that Elite Tyranitar, I'm gonna just Dragon Dance because I'm a baller. And if you Focus Punch me, then alright, fine, you deserve it. But this Swampert will come in. I'm going to switch immediately to the Sceptile, who takes a Hydro Pump for not too much. I'm threatening to go for a Leaf Blade here, but anticipating that my opponent would want to switch, I'm going to go for Leech Seed. So they could have switched to Salamence, and HP Ice would have been great for that. But my thought is, well, I already outspeed Salamence, and if that is the switch in, then I'm just going to HP Ice it when it's in. And if it's not exactly DD Mence, or like a really high Speed Def investment Mence, then I should be killing it most of the time. So I'm going to go for Leech Seed, anticipating they have a different grass resist, and I do manage to find a Registeel here. So That's pretty nice. I'm getting a lot of HP back there. I'm going to go to Claydol on the Registeel so that I don't get Thunder Waved. Instead, they're going to go to Mence here, who is going to switch out to Cloyster as I switch out to Registeel of my own. So they have a Cloyster Spike Stack offense team with the Registeel as a sort of disruptor for opposing offensive pieces. So that's kind of nice. This Swampert has revealed Hydro Pump, so I assume that it's going to be an Earthquake pert. So I'm going to go for a counter there. As they go for Ice Beam, I guess anticipating that I would want to switch to Sceptile. Now I'm just going to go for Seismic Tosses because I think my opponent's going to be gun-shy about going for the Earthquake. But now I'm going to switch to Sceptile, anticipating that they would go for Earthquake. I could have maybe stayed in and gotten the counter off, but depending on how much attack investment this pert has, it might have killed my Registeel or like a crit or something like that. I'd rather Sceptile just come in. And now it gets that Leaf Blade off and kills Swampert. So there you go. It is a Swampert counter. And then Mence comes in and I'm like, oh, this is great because I can go for HP Ice and I don't kill the Mence. And it Brick Breaks me. That's not cool. Well, this might actually be a Penguin Mence itself. Not quite. It has Brick Break and Hidden Power Flying. But I managed to get a critical hit Psychic off there. Certainly mattered a lot. I'm going to keep this Claydol in versus Tyranitar to get my Earthquake damage. Reveals Ice Beam. So this is probably Guoktar. If you don't know what Guoktar is, you should watch my video on Pseudo-Wudo. It'll make more sense when you watch the video. Why? But yeah, Registeel is just going to take a Fire Blast and die. As I can go to my own Tyranitar, who should be able to take a Brick Break. I actually outspeed them, which is kind of interesting. And I get my Dragon Dance off and get that Earthquake kill. Now Registeel is in, should be able to live a +1 Earthquake and finish off my Tyranitar, but it's left really low for its troubles. And Claydol should be outspeeding, threatening the KO with Earthquake. I managed to get a little bit of damage off on the Cloyster switch. And I'm going to go for Explosion so that this Cloyster can't do any funny business. And it puts it into range for my Salamence to get the kill. I go for Hidden Power Flying. I know I said I have Penguin Mence, but I promised that I did use it. But I guess while I was climbing up here, I was riding or dying with just a regular DD Mence. They go for Thunderbolt, meaning they don't have HP Ice. And yeah, I just win the game from there, which is great. If they did have HP Ice, well, then I was just going to have to CM War with the Raikou, and whoever gets that crit or that para or whatever first would win. Slight advantage to my opponent because I would have taken the Spikes damage, but in any case, we win here. Also some really high level gamers here, like all 1650s or higher. Not this gamer, sorry to set you up for that, A Tribe Called Dan, but 1527 is pretty respectable. Where am I at? 1551, so this is going to be an important game for me to get that climb up there, and I think actually this is the first game in a win streak that got me to 1650. I saved every replay from 1550 to 1650, so that was good. Lead Zapdos versus my Tyranitar. I'm just gonna be aggressive and get that Dragon Dance off. If they switch to Dugtrio, then so be it. And I'm gonna go for another Dragon Dance because I'm like, you, sir, are not gonna be able to kill my Tyranitar. That roll is just not. It just doesn't exist. Probably does, but in any case, okay. Zets, you've made me self-conscious about this. I'm noticing myself say it all the time. I hate this. I have a +2/+2 Tyranitar. They did set Rain Dance, which means they probably have a Swift Swimmer in the back. It is Kingdra. And I'm going to switch to Sceptile, who dodges a Hydro Pump. So probably the most useful thing it's done all this video. That's probably not true, but I can pivot to Registeel now, who should take a Ice Beam pretty well. I can go for Thunder Wave. If it's a Lumberry Kingdra, then great, I burn its Lumberry. If it's not, then whatever. And then they switch to Magneton. So this has happened a lot in these games, and I'm just going to give you some advice as this Registeel versus Magneton. If the Magneton comes in on Revenge, you probably want to Thunder Wave it. because you can steal turns away, and then as long as you get one turn back, then you're like net neutral. If you get more than one turn back, then Registeel wins. But if you catch it with a Seismic Toss, 3 Seismic Tosses are always going to kill Magneton. I think even if it's leftovers, unless it has like really high HP investment and Protect and stuff like that. If you manage to catch it with the Seismic Toss, better to just go for the Seismic Tosses to kill it, because you're more likely to not get a drop there than to get it. And we also managed to catch this Dugtrio on Switch for some pretty good chip. This allows me to go to Salamence, and so with a team that does not have Porygon 2 that really needs Dug removal, one thing that you can do is have a DD Mence on your team, because DD Mence is one of the most punishing things for Dugtrio getting a kill. I managed to get a Dragon Dance here, but they reveal Suicune, and I can't very well stay in on that. I get Ice Beams for my troubles here, but that puts me into Overgrow range, which means I can do a lot of damage to Suicune. I wouldn't even kill it, but that's fine. Dugtrio comes in thinking that it's going to outspeed my Sceptile, and then just loses right there. I don't know why my opponent, a tribe called Dan here, tried that with the Dugtrio. I think probably going to Suicune there when I'm out of Overgrow range was the best play you could have made. But I guess maybe they thought I could be modest, right? Or modest Sceptile, and they would have outsped a modest Sceptile, but I don't know. We caught you cheating on your Dugtrio speed, so Sceptile just wins the game from there. And then we would have got good damage on Kingdra, we could have Leech Seeded or gotten some good damage on Suicune, and then we're setting up for Raikou to win this game, because with this structure I'm not anticipating that Blissey's the last Pokemon, so yeah, Raikou would have been really, really good here. And yeah, there you go, there's Sceptile. I hope that was satisfying for those of you who have been asking for it. I can't lie, it's not the best Pokemon that I've used, and it underperformed in a lot of cases. But as far as the 3 UUBL challenges go, I do think that Sceptile was one of the more fun Pokemon I could have picked. I mean, like, I think I don't know what most people use to complete it. I think Raikou is probably very common, and Raikou might be moving up to OU soon. So I wanted to make sure that I got this challenge in before Raikou moved up, because that would be hard mode. But Registeel's a great one to use. Porygon 2 works really well, especially if you have a Raikou team. So if you want to try a Porygon 2 Raikou team, you can check out my video on Raikou, which I think only has 2 UUBLs, or you can check out my video on Blaziken, which has 3 UUBLs. I did think about trying to get that team to 1650, but I was like, well, if I'm going to be trying a UUBL, I might as well try a new one, and Sceptile was the one that I wanted to try, so there we go. And shoutouts to Gorgie, I think, who brought, I think, these 6 Pokemon to an SPL game, which is kind of cool. I did actually manage to find that player on ladder using this team, so basically their team. I don't think I have the exact EVs and movesets and all that that they did, but kind of cool that that's how it worked out. I did lose that game, by the way, but I'm not showing it not because I lost, but because basically Sceptile didn't do anything. So yeah. And it wasn't as funny as that 6 UUBLs team, so I didn't think it was really that worth showing. But I don't know, maybe I'll put it in the description or in a pinned comment or something if enough people are requesting it. But yeah, that was Sceptile, and have some fun with it. Try out that Crunch Pursuit idea with Sceptile. I think that could be really good as an alternative Pursuit Trapper. Particularly for teams that don't want to run Pursuit on their Tyranitar. I think that set does fit better on sand teams, so you still want to have Tyranitar, but if you want to free up Tyranitar to be a DD Sweeper or a Banded Thread or something like that, then yeah, try that Crunch Pursuit Sceptile out. Try out Zetz's Slacktile offense if you want to be hard capped at 1400 ELO. But yeah, there we go. get mogged, Zeds. I got Sceptile to a higher elo than you did, so yeah. And as for the replay where I get to 1650, check out Zets' channel. It was replay of the week, I believe, X or 10, and I think I was maybe doing commentary on that. I'm not sure. So yeah, I'll probably link that in the description. So shout out Zets, shout out Mint Yerb, great player, who showed me a team very similar to this that I actually based this off of, and Gorgie for using V6 and SPL and proving that it could work. So there we go.